I'm asked, a lot of the time I'm asked about what the difference is between a classical guitar and a flamenco guitar, not only about the guitars, but how to play it. So, for example, here is a typical classical guitar, and it's a cedar top wood, and on the back is Brazilian rosewood, which is now, of course, prohibited, but this is from before it was prohibited. It's an old guitar, and the difference also is not only the wood, which gives a different, warmer sound, but also the setup. So in other words, the difference between the distance between the string and the strings and the soundboard is higher on a classical guitar. So more difficult in a sense to play, especially for flamenco. So that's a traditional kind of classical guitar. So now I'm going to show you a flamenco guitar. Actually, this one is not very typical, but it looks typical. It's a cypress spruce top. And the setup is much lower, the distance between the strings and the soundboard is lower. And on the back, usually a flamenco guitar has cypress, in other words, cypress wood. This one was custom made for me as a one-off actually, but with flamed maple, the same as Stradivarius violin, in fact. So this has a slight difference, but this looks the same as a typical flamenco guitar. But now, actually, what I'm going to show you is what we use these days also, which is called a guitarra mista or negra, which is actually in between the two. So this one is a spruce top, like the typical flamenco, but on the back it has rosewood as well. So it's a kind of combination of the classical and flamenco together. And the setup, of course, the distance between the strings and the soundboard is lower for me to play my flamenco. So now we've got this guitar. Typical differences between the flamenco guitar, how to play the flamenco guitar and the classical guitar. The obvious thing is, of course, the compás, the rhythm. In flamenco, we use a lot of very strict rhythms, and also it's very percussive in flamenco. And we use a lot of rasgueos, kind of strums, as we say in Spanish, rasgueo. A lot of tapping on the guitar. And lots of kind of modal, as we call it, modal work in modes, as opposed to in the classical where they have all sorts of different keys, and of course there's an enormous amount of compositions from Bach to anyone to play on the guitar. It's fabulous. Whereas in the flamenco traditional guitar, we're quite limited in our harmony to certain chord progressions. Of course, these days we can improve on that and try much more harmonically difficult things, but traditionally that's what it is. Also, the difference is with classical is that they tend to play around the sound hole, and the difference is they're looking for the quality of tone. So when you play the guitar, they're looking more for a warmer tone. I'm not a classical guitarist, but I do know that, and they're more interested, well, not interested, but they're more concerned about that. But as I say, about the tone and about how to strike the note. Whereas in flamenco, we play between the sound hole and the bridge, and it's much more percussive and perhaps, if you like, aggressive in a way. So those are the main differences to start off with between the flamenco and classical guitar. Well, actually, one other thing is you may just about see what's called a golpeador, which is a piece of very fine plastic which is put onto the guitar on the top and the bottom to make sure that when we hit the guitar with a golpe, with our ring finger, we don't actually scratch it all to pieces and end up going through the soundboard. So those are the main differences between flamenco and classical guitar.